Hello, so this is my fourth basic banjo lesson. So I've done a few, I've done three obviously previously, but I did also have a lesson 0, so this is kind of the fifth. So yeah, I've covered a lot of other basic stuff in the previous videos. These videos go through things quite slowly, possibly painstakingly, but if you're a beginner, you pretty much will need that, so going through them will be very helpful. So in previous videos, what I've gone through is the basic strumming pattern, basic plucking, a few chords. We've not looked at like hitting strings individually, so yeah, we'll take it a little bit further in this final basic lesson video. So firstly, what we want to be able to do is play more chords, basically. So we'll start there. I think that's a good place to start. So in previous videos, what I've done is the G chord, obviously just the open strings like that. We've done the E minor like this, so that's the 2nd fret on each of the D strings, the high and the low one. And I think it's good to use these 2 middle fingers, your 2nd and your 3rd finger. And then, well, the reason we use those 2 fingers is because the transition between the E minor and the C is therefore far easier. So the C is just the E minor with this 1st finger down on the 1st fret of the B string. And if you're still a beginner to the point of not knowing the names of the strings, you do need to put a bit of time into learning that this is D, G, B, E, and G again. So we've got 2 Gs, 2 Ds, and we've got a B. Although it didn't sound like I'm particularly in tune, so I should probably tune up. Okay, it wasn't particularly bad, but there was one string about. Anyway, so new chords. We'll only learn a few more in this lesson. So we've got the G, we've already got the E minor, we've got the C, oh, and there's the D. The D you can either play with 2 fingers on the 2nd fret of the G string and the 3rd fret of the B string, or we can do it with 3 fingers and add a little finger onto the 4th fret of the D string. You get that? All that. When you're a beginner, perfectly fine to play this, but over time you probably want to be able to play this as well. Anyway, new chords then. So the next new chord is the A minor chord. The way to play this, basically we play that C chord that we've already learnt, and then this 2nd finger comes off from the low D string onto the G string, still the 2nd fret. And what you want to do is try to avoid hitting this low open D string, or mute it with your thumb. You get this sound. Really, we want these 3 chords. So that's the A minor, and then we'll also learn the B minor, which is actually just the A minor up 2 frets. Same shape. This time you can let that low D ring out because there's a D in the chord, so it sounds fine. But it is just the A minor up 2 frets, and that's the B minor there. With the B minor, more than any other chord, just be careful with your thumb pluck. It can sound a little bit out of place. It can also sound fine, but it can sound out of place, so be careful. Listen to that, there's a bit of a clash between this F sharp on top and the G there on that top string. So yeah, it can sound a bit strange, be careful with it. Yeah, A minor, B minor. And the last chord we will learn is the G7. Now, right now I'm just teaching you a bunch of random chords, but they will be applicable in places. So right now there's no immediate application, but trust me, they will become useful. Anyway, G7, and the way we're going to play it, we can actually play any chord can be played in a multitude of different ways, but for now we just need to learn the basic ways of playing them, so we'll keep it simple. G7, so obviously the G chord is this, and a G7 is very close to this. We just put a finger, doesn't really matter which finger it is, it depends what you're kind of playing, I guess, on the 3rd fret of the high D string, and you get this kind of sound. We call that a G7 chord. If you listen to it, there's plenty of dissonance in that chord. It's kind of a tense chord. I'm not going to go into what this chord does or how it works or what that tension is exactly, but just listen to it for now and just try to remember there's a bit of tension in that, a bit of dissonance, and that's all we need to know for now. So yeah, just 3rd finger on that top D string, you get a G7. Cool, so that's just next set of chords. Now we want to learn the G major scale. So the open chord is obviously a G, and most of what we play is in a G, so we want to learn the G major scale, which is, put simply, the notes that will sound good in the key of G. That's not the entire story, but for now that will have to do as a simplification. Cool, so the G major scale, we're just going to learn it really basically for now. We're just going to learn the pattern. We're not going to go into detail about what each note is or the position or anything like that. Don't worry about that stuff now. Let's just learn the pattern. And to start off with, you don't need to claw hammer it, although I'd recommend getting to that point eventually. To start, if it's easier for people to just learn the pattern of the strings, you can just pluck it, because all we need to do to start off with is learn where the notes are and what the pattern is. Anyway, I will claw hammer my way through it, but you don't have to. Just learn the pattern to start off with. Anyway, so on the low D string, we go from the 0 open string, 2nd, 4th. When you're learning this for the first time, just take your time with it and do that a few times. Get used to that pattern. Open 2, 4, open 2, 4. And then the next string is open and then the 2nd fret. That's those first 5 notes that we're learning. Open 2, 4, open 2. And then on the next string, it's the open string and then the 1st fret. So we're onto the B string there. So all the notes so far. And then on the top string, 0, open string, 2, 4, 5. Then overall, open 2, 4, open 2, open 1, open 2, 4, 5. And then, over time, you'll want to learn it backwards. But for now, just... And then eventually... That's the G scale. Something worth remembering is that on every string, we start on the open string, because we're in the key, well, the banjo is tuned to a G chord, so each open string is going to be in the scale somewhere. So it's always, so for example, open 2, 4, open 2, open 1, open 2, 4, 5. It's always starting on the open string on each string. And they all go from the open string to the 2nd fret, except for the B string. So these things might help you remember the pattern a little bit. So open 2nd, 4, open 2nd, open 1st, that's the exception. It's the only one where we go to the open string to the open string to the 1st string. I can't speak. It's the only time we go from the open string to the 1st fret. So everything else, open 2, 4, open 2, open 1, open 2, 4, 5. Just take your time to learn that. You don't need to get it perfect straight away, but it's kind of like learning the ABCs of music, learning scales. It is important, but it's not the most important thing right now. Just try to get the pattern down. In previous lessons, we've gone through how to play like the basic Dum Ditty, and I've kept it really simple. It's just down, down, pluck, down, down, pluck. All the strings each time, down, down, pluck. Making sure this thumb rests every time. Make sure your hand goes right through all the strings, keeping it relaxed and straight wrist. Don't move your finger. It's not this. It's not this. It's this from the arm to start off with. But even that is just the most basic. Down, down, up, down, down, up. Very basic. Really what we want to be doing ideally is middle string, all pluck. Low string, all pluck. So instead of, really what we're doing is, that's like the classic Dum Ditty kind of banjo style. It's a classic sound. We've all heard that. It's got that kind of cowboy song, you know, on the range kind of feel to it. It's a bit cliched, but it is what it is. So we want to be able to do that rather than just hit all the strings each time. So we need to practice hitting strings individually. So maybe I did cover this in one of the previous lessons a little bit, but to start off with, the easiest string to hit separately is this high D string, the one that's physically on the bottom. It's easy to isolate it and hit it by itself, but a key thing you want to remember here is to not worry too much about your accuracy. It's easy to think that you need to be super accurate with it, but ultimately, If you're aiming for one string and you kind of clip another a little bit, it's not a big deal. In fact, even if you hit a bunch, to start off with, don't get too hung up on accuracy. Anyway, hitting that top string is easy enough because it's easy to isolate. It's still going to be a bit tricky, but to do this, your hand, instead of just going up and down, needs to go in and out a little bit. And you're actually hitting through the string, right through it, and it's hitting the banjo head. It's actually like clacking against the banjo head, and your thumb is kind of hitting against the banjo head too as well. Anyway, I'm sure I covered this in one of the previous lessons. Over time, we want to be able to hit other strings separately. Fundamentally, the motion is kind of the same. We're hitting the string, goes through it. Your fingernail, or if you've got, like me, a finger pick, you've hit either the banjo head or the string just above it, just momentarily. Not enough to go through it, just enough to tap it, really. And then we kind of up and down. And the thumb, every time, hits quite robustly into the banjo head like that. Anyway, over time, you'll learn how to hit the middle string. You want to take your time. Middle string, all, pluck. Rhythmically, in time, it's middle string, all, pluck. Middle string, all, pluck. Rhythmically, Dum Ditties are 1, 2, and 1, 2, and. Some of that was a little bit sloppy there, but that's kind of the point. You don't need to worry too much about really being accurate. See how my hand as well is very relaxed? I'm not... My hand moves a little bit, but it's not like this and it's not like that. It really is just movement of this and everything's just relaxed. That will come in time. It's not easy to just get immediately. It's not immediate. What? That will come in time. It's not easy to get immediately. You just need to practice it, but you will get there. So middle, all, pluck, middle, all, pluck, and then practice separately low string, all, pluck, low string, all, pluck, and then over time, don't get to it too quickly. It will take a little bit of time to get it right. Middle, all, pluck, low, all, pluck, middle, all, pluck, low, all, pluck. But to start off with, you do need to practice it slow. You'll notice thumb is always landing, thumb is always You'll notice thumb is always landing and thumb is always coming off as well, even if you're not plucking. So middle, all, pluck, low, all, pluck. And eventually you get used to just doing that. Once you're at that point, you want to bring chords back into it. So we've got the open G, and then the next easy one is the C. So really, just do this. G, C, G, C, G, C, G, C. And you want to be doing the middle, all pluck, low, all pluck on each chord. And you can do it like 2 or 3 times on each chord, but just be consistent with it. Try to pay attention to how many times you do it on each chord and be consistent with it. And then as you get along, just do it with other chords. So you do it with the G to C, G to E minor if you want, G to D, or G to, or C to D. I messed that up a little bit, but the point is, this is how you practice them, and you have to do it slow to start off with, because if you're combining chords that you've just learnt with a right hand style that you've just learnt, it's going to take a little bit of time to get them both separately working and then working together, which is the real challenge, that multitasking bit. But you will get there. Just take it nice and slow, far slower than what I was playing it there, and aim not for like super accuracy with your right hand in terms of hitting the right string each time, but accuracy of style and technique, which is again that relaxed technique. If you hit a note like I did there twice in a row, slightly off, or you clip a note not quite correctly, or you hit too many strings, don't worry about that. Just kind of power through it a bit. Just take your time, keep going, and then it will come together and it will get more accurate. Clawhammer banjo isn't the most accurate technique for most people most of the time anyway. It's not like a super 3-fingered banjo playing, for example, has a kind of higher ceiling of technical proficiency. I think most people would recognize. Clawhammer banjo is in many ways a very inefficient style. Then that's why it's such a distinctive, unique kind of rhythmic drive to it. But yeah, don't aim for absolute perfection. You'll probably never attain it with Clawhammer banjo. I personally don't think I'm there. I'm sure there's someone out there, but it's rare. It's rarer. It's rarer. I mean, it's rarer full stop with any instrument, but it's rarer than with other instruments where the technical proficiency kind of ceiling is higher. There's just too much inefficiency and possible sloppiness with Clawhammer Banjo. You have to embrace that to some degree. Anyway, cool. So that's chords. That's the Dum Ditty. That's chords with the Dum Ditty. And we've done the major scale. So yeah, it's quite a bit. I would recommend just going through the things in this lesson and just doing it bit by bit and then trying to combine it all. But also definitely go through my previous lesson videos if you haven't already, because it kind of takes you through it step by step. And there's a few things in there about getting your technique right, your posture right, that is very important, but I've not covered in this lesson. Yeah. And then when you start actually learning tunes, the first tune that most people are going to learn is a tune called Cripple Creek. And this really is the best banjo tune for anyone to learn. The reason this is such a good tune to learn is because it covers everything we've done so far with a few extra things, which maybe I will actually cover after this. It's got chords, it's got dum ditties, it's got the right hand stuff. Yeah, everything you need to play with on banjo is kind of encapsulated within Clawhammer until you get to be quite an advanced player, and there are other techniques beyond it slightly. But for the most part, you know, Cripple Creek really does just bring in everything, and it's a good way to practice all the things we need for the vast majority of Clawhammer tunes. So Cripple Creek, I'm sure you've probably already tried to learn it, or maybe you've already learnt it, or you've heard it at least, but this is how it sounds. Repeat on and on and on. So yeah, compared to a lot of instruments introductory first tune you learn, you know, on guitar it's Smoke on the Water probably. This is actually quite tricky because there's a few things we need to bring into it. So yeah, the right hand style, the dum ditties, there are slides and hammer-ons and pull-offs, which actually I will cover now. But Cripple Creek is a great tune, but it's still relatively complicated for like a beginner tune. Still, it's going to be the best thing you can practice. When you get to it, there are tabs everywhere out there. I'll probably make a lesson video on it. But yeah, it's simple enough, but it is also tricky and it poses a few challenges. But once you're through it, you should have a really good handle on everything you need to do with Clawhammer. Anyway, yeah, so the other things that I should talk about briefly in this are just hammer-ons and pull-offs. I will just kind of vaguely talk about them here, maybe in the context of some of the chords we've looked at. So Clawhammer Banjo, as I said before, is quite limited in terms of what it can do because we fundamentally just have two motions, that and that. That and that, it's just two. So to make up for that a bit, we want to add little articulations with this left hand. So one of them can be a slide, like that. You hit a note and slide, or you slide down. Those kind of sounds. So this is using Cripple Creek. Right at the start. Cripple Creek, there are tons of different versions and each is subtly different but fundamentally the same. So the way I always play it is, so there's that little slide at the start. I won't go into detail now on how to play it, but that's just, it's there so you know. These kind of sounds. Very useful, and they're just another way of articulating going between notes. Another one is a hammer-on. Again, this is used in Cripple Creek. What we do with this is we hit a string, either fretted or not, and then we hammer on to a different fret. So you'll see that I hit the note and then this right hand doesn't do anything else for the next one. It's just purely produced by me hitting the string hard enough to produce another sound. And a pull-off is really just the opposite. You hit a string, fretted, this time it has to be fretted, otherwise you can't really do a pull-off. And again, you're not using this to produce the next sound, it's just literally pulling your finger off the string to produce sound. And then both pull-offs and hammer-ons are in this phrase of Cripple Creek. And then hammer-ons. Very, very useful to the clawhammer player. So if you're going to practice these, I wouldn't practice the slide for now, but if you want to practice these, just isolate it completely outside of the context of a tune. So just pick a note, put your first finger on it. It could be anywhere, to be honest, but let's just choose for now the 5th fret of the high D string. First finger on that fret, and then just hit it hard enough to produce a sound. For now, just keep it nice and slow and just make sure it's confident, and then pull off. At first you have to do it slow, and you won't feel very confident with it at all. It will feel awkward and weird, and it'll feel inaccurate, and yeah, but you just need to do it nice and slow, and over time you will get better at it. But yeah, if you do it fast enough, you call it a trill. But for now, just do each one purposely, separately. So hit, pull off, hammer on, pull off, hammer on, pull off. And don't worry if it hits another string or makes it sound out briefly. For now, you're just trying to get this going. That's all you need to do. Over time, if you do this, you'll get faster, you'll get more confident, it'll get stronger, more accurate, all this kind of stuff. And then you'll be able to put it into a tune. But I do think it's really useful to isolate a technique like that by itself and then apply it into an actual song. Anyway, this is, yeah, as I said, the final of my introductory videos. From now, I'll probably just make general videos on tunes and things like that. I've got a couple of videos coming out soon, I think. So yeah, good luck with your clawhammer banjo playing. Take your time with things, but most of all, just keep a nice relaxed right hand. That's like the main thing. The right hand is like the engine of the banjo. It keeps it going. It really is. You just don't want it. You want to get to the point where you're not thinking about it. It just kind of happens, and then you can do your thinking with this left hand. You know, just hit the notes you need to hit. Do your little twiddles and hammer-ons and pull-offs, play your tunes with your left hand, and this hand wants to be automatic. So this is super important. For all stringed instruments, really, it's true that this hand you don't want to be thinking too much about. I keep saying right hand. You might be left-handed, in which case it's your left hand, but it's your clawhammer hand. This is the one that wants to be automatic. And when you're looking at something, for the most part, 99% of the time, you're looking at this hand because this is the one that we want to think with, because it's doing things that kind of require a little bit more thought. Whereas this, it just wants to be automatic. You just want to know how to play it, and it just happens automatically. I keep saying automatically, but that really is a big key point of it. And a big help towards that is not worrying, and I have to keep saying this. Everyone I teach, I say this to a lot. You have to not worry about accuracy too much. We want to get the right technique and the right style, but if we go through Cripple Creek and we're hitting every string all the time, we're not accurate at all with this hand. If the technique's right, it'll be fine, and it'll sound alright actually. I was just hitting every string each time. I was being super sloppy with this hand, but the technique was right. It was the right rhythm, and it was hitting the strings. That's the important thing. If you try to prioritize accuracy, like, oh, I'm going to make sure I hit this specific string, that will really trip you up. Do not, a lot of people say this when I teach them, like, don't try to like tee it up, don't watch it, see where your finger is, see that it's like ready to hit this string, and don't, people try to be sly and just like, oh, I'll just find it with this finger and I know it. Don't tee up your right hand. Make sure that first strike in particular is just confident, and if confident means less accurate, that's fine. That's really a sacrifice that you should be willing to make, because it's not the most important thing to hit strings individually compared to doing the technique right. And that's, the benefit of this open G string. If you're in the key of G and you're just hitting a bunch of notes in the key of G, it's not going to sound too bad. That's me being as sloppy as possible, and none of that sounds bad. It all fits because everything's in the key of G, and because I'm prioritizing the rhythm and the technique over accuracy. Anyway, that is us. I hope you have enjoyed these lessons, and stick around for other videos I might make.